Good morning, everyone. I hope that you are well. This is going to be my first lecture on the BRICS. I had not paid attention to the BRICS because my focus has been on political violence and state building, particularly the building of small municipalities, which are part of what we may refer to as rural municipalities, where there is still a need for local economic development, so that those areas must also be beautiful and be attractive to tourists, and also to even people who are seeking education in a different town, or people who are religious tourists who are looking for a mountain to pray upon, and stuff like that. You will remember that the BRICS was started by four countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Of course, it has a history before that, but BRICS itself originally had those countries, meaning that with the admission of new countries into the BRICS, then it might have to change its name because it's no longer the BRICS, it's something else which has been extended. It is common cause that these countries that I've mentioned are the biggest economies in their regions in terms of economic production and economic development. You will remember that now China is referred to as the engine of this civilization, this new world order that we are living under. Meaning that in BRICS, we have the engine of the world. Of course, also if you have the engine, you also have the workshop, because the engine must be put together, must be assembled, it must be created. Now, the problem begins when there is an admission of Saudi Arabia or other Arabic or Islamic countries. But of course, Saudi Arabia has experienced a relative peace compared to Iran, Syria, Libya, and other countries, even Afghanistan. The oil of Saudi Arabia, as far as I understand it, is backed by oil, but it has been diversified to include buildings, to include sports franchises, and different kinds of investments. Now, of course, we are Africans. We cannot hide the fact that we love football, we love soccer. But now you remember that the Russians have been banned from FIFA competitions because of NATO and Ukraine, and of course the European Union. Out of the BRICS countries, I believe that South Africa, with the exclusion of Russia, is the highest ranking FIFA nation. And South Africa is still preparing to go to the World Cup, and we are pitted against the Nigerians themselves, who have also joined BRICS. We must not run away from the fact that even though President Donald Trump, from the beginning had a negative attitude towards the United Nations because he saw it as a failure. I don't know whether he wanted the United Nations to work as an arm of the United States government, but that is not what the United Nations was created for. It was created to ensure international peace and stability, which it is able to ensure, because if there was no peace, I would not even be recording this. So there are pockets of peace in the world, but then there are also war zones. The United Nations cannot prevent a war because you cannot be everywhere at all times. Only the Creator, God, can be everywhere at all times and can prevent wars by making people less angry. So that is one of the arts which we must learn to make people less angry and remind them what the bigger picture is, not according to me, but according to the United Nations. Now, the United States is a leader of NATO. It created NATO as a military wing to make sure that it becomes powerful. Of course, with an alliance of the Europeans, who also wanted to protect themselves from the Nazis and also from the Russians, the communists, or the Slavic people. Now, of course, what people don't normally pay attention to is that the United States may use NATO to recolonize or to colonize Europe, because if the USA sees itself as the most advanced production of Europe, then it may use that advancement to colonize the old country or the old continent and make them developed in an American way, not in a classical way as they are at the moment. Now, of course, when you go to Europe, you know there's a continental consciousness, and then there is also the Icelandic consciousness. Now, in history, we know that Britain left the European Union through what is called Brexit, meaning that it was no longer satisfied with continental trade and wanted to have individual agreements with individual sovereign states. Perhaps understanding that the European Union is not a sovereign state but a confederation of states which has been created for a specific purpose. Perhaps they saw that that purpose was no longer being served, or it was no longer served in the way that the British wanted to be served. So basically, the Great Britain wants to negotiate as London rather than as the European Union. Of course, you'll remember one of the key issues in Europe at that time was the issue of migration, people who are leaving war zones to migrate to Europe. Not savage people, but city people who were living in cities where they are coming from. And they want to migrate to another city, not to migrate to the south of the USA, where they are living an agricultural life and civilization uh, is kept at bay. Of course, as a South African who's concerned about tertiary education, I ask myself a question. With the Nigerians being admitted to BRICS and knowing that education allows a person to be effective in the workplace, will we now see more Nigerians applying to study at South African universities and more South Africans applying to study at Nigerian universities? And what kind of planning have universities come up with to ensure that these people who are our partners in BRICS also have a good experience when they visit BRICS countries, so that they can tell their families how South Africa is, and they may return maybe many years later on holiday because they would have known a BRICS university, even if they stay at the university the entire time, because you can find many things in the campus. And of course, we cannot run away from the issue of religious diversity. When SRC's student representative councils host opening prayers and examination prayers, will they invite a rabbi, or will they invite a monk, or will they invite a mufti to come and pray for students to pass and for students to understand what their teachers and their tutors and their friends and the security guards and everyone, even the garden men, even the cleaners, are teaching them? And if a Chinese monk is allowed to give a sermon, who will understand the Chinese monk? Will it not be a person who is studying linguistics and who has majored in Mandarin? But what if that monk is from Tibet and perhaps is not speaking Mandarin as a protest against the industrialization of China and the effects of industrial life? Not looking at the shiny and the fancy things, but looking at civilization itself and whether it is better than living in the mountains. And how many would actually understand what a monk is saying, even if they understand the language that the monk is speaking? Now, Nigeria is a federal state, and Nigeria is federalism statified. Nigerians seem to have an understanding that when corruption has become so rife, and it usually happens with the discovery of a global common which can be profitable, just like the discovery of oil in the Niger Delta changed the face of the Niger Delta. Now, corruption can also shock the conscience of mankind in the same way that gross violation of human rights does, such as the chopping of the hands of children and the removal of the lips of women, and the generalized murder in places like Central African Republic and in Uganda, where a body of a former head of state is made to rot in the city and to be eaten by vultures, or those sad images of Gaddafi being dragged on the streets of Libya by people who perhaps have never even read the Green Book and never gave him a chance to teach them how to live in Libya and also how to live in the world. South Africa is not a federal state per se. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996 makes it very clear that South Africa is a united territory. It is a unitary state, meaning that a person who is in Gauteng and a person who is in the Western Cape and a person who is in KwaZulu are in the same state. But of course, their environmental conditions may not be the same. And of course, their experience of those environmental conditions may not be the same, even with their children, with their neighbors, because there might be people who don't believe in the captivity of dogs, but other neighbors may believe in that. He may not believe in the farming of pigs, but a far away neighbor may believe in that, and then on a Sunday may release the pigs to roam the streets and become a danger to children and to drunkards, which are produced by society itself. The unitary nature of South Africa is exemplified when we look at the fact that we have premiers of the 9 provinces, but we do not have prime ministers. If South Africa was a federal state, we would have prime ministers, or even all the premiers could be called deputy presidents and then have premiers as deputy presidents instead of having a deputy president appointed by the national parliament. Now, according to intergovernmental relations legislation that has been passed by the South African Parliament, premiers and ministers are supposed to meet under the President's Coordinating Council. However, since this body is a high-powered body, a high-powered delegation, they hardly meet for logistical reasons and for security reasons. It is even difficult to get a hold of a premier of the province's director of his office, just as the head of admin in the office of the premier. On a related note, we hardly get wind of the decisions that are taken by the President's Coordinating Committee because of the sensitive nature of the information and perhaps because the information has been classified. With the Arabs now being members of the BRICS, we must be careful about the manner in which we go about registering shops or stores and making sure that the labor conditions are all right in the shops and the stores and the farms, and that at the very least, workers get the minimum wage as agreed to at NEDLAC at that on that year, so that we don't sit with an agreement from 2013 when the economic conditions have changed in 2025. African women, which have hitherto been protected by African men, must also be protected from degrading practices which may be allowed in some BRICS countries. Perhaps in Arab countries, a female cannot be a president. But in Brazil, a female in the form of Da Silva has been a president. But unfortunately, she was removed in the coup because she was accused of corruption. And the step aside principle was applied to her. South Africa has never had a female president. Mbeki tried with Mlambo Ngcuka, but he was rejected. Zuma and Ace Magashule tried with Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, whom they had successfully sent to Addis Ababa as an AU Commission chair. But Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma lost the presidency of the ANC to Ramaphosa, who became the president of the country. And Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was made, at a later stage, a minister in the presidency of the very same person that had defeated her. Had she won the ANC nomination, there is no doubt that she would have become the first black South African woman president. And of course, when we are talking about the BRICS, we must also understand that South Africa also has agreements with other countries who are outside of BRICS, such as the United States of America, which is the biggest economy in the world. According to the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, there are 1,800 products which are exempted from paying dues to access the US market. In 2025, there is a need to renew the AGOA agreement. Perhaps that is what President Ramaphosa went to the USA for. In 2022, AGOA facilitated trade stood at 4.9% or just under 50, not 4.9, $49.9 billion or just under $50 billion. When we look at the balance of trade, the USA makes $18.5 billion from the trade, and All the African countries combined make $31.4 billion. And then you have to ask yourself, who benefits the most in Africa, looking at per country and also looking at per industry from the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act and its implementation. Of course, since the USA is dealing with a continent as a continent, but is not dealing with countries individually, it may look as if Africa's balance of trade favors Africa because we are making more money, but Africa has over 54 countries. So meaning that the balance of trade, if you divide that 31.4 billion by 54, you will see that even if theoretically we look at, let me just try to do that and see whether this calculator that I have will allow me to calculate 31 31.4 billion. So if you do that, each country would get from the trade 581,481,481 rands. Now you can clearly see that the balance of trade is in favor of the United States, even when we look at AGOA itself. So it is for the South African Parliament to weigh whether they should really be chasing the Americans on the question of AGOA, and also whether they should be we should be dealing with the United States as individual countries so that they can have statistics on how, as an individual sovereign state, they are relating with another sovereign state, because USA is not negotiating as North America. It is negotiating as the United States of America, which is a middle country in North America. Thank you.